The story opens with a revelation that strikes like a thunderclap. While Ineacutes was giving birth to her daughter Lucy, her husband Alessandro was in bed with her sister Isabel. It is a betrayal so complete that it reverberates through every quiet moment that follows. From her sickbed, Ineacutes moves in and out of a half-dreaming state, confined to the wide mahogany bed where she has been recovering for 3 weeks. The birth has left her weak, the silence of the house oppressive. Her husband, her sister, and her young son Giulio seem to have vanished into some unspoken absence. She performs her toilette as an act of defiance, washing herself, scenting her skin with rose cologne, brushing her hair, transforming her weariness into a fragile semblance of dignity. Even so, she tires quickly, sitting back against her pillows, wondering why no one comes to call. The maid Mariella hovers at the edge of the room, hesitant and anxious. When Ineacutes asks after Isabel and Alessandro, Mariella's answers only deepen the sense of unease. They left early that morning and have not returned. When Ineacutes finally decides to descend the stairs, it is with the fragile determination of someone who refuses to surrender to abandonment. Her body still torn from childbirth, she grips the banister, step by step, haunted by memories of happier times, Alessandro carrying her drunkenly up those same stairs to bed, Isabel laughing beside her as they felt the unborn Lucy stir, little Giulio's giggles echoing up the wooden steps. Each memory is a ghostly echo of what she has lost. The downstairs rooms are dim and still. The study door is locked, the key missing. As Ineacute stands trembling in the candlelight, a searing pain cuts through her abdomen. When she wakes again, Mariella is screaming. She had found her mistress collapsed at the dining table, pale and bloodied. Giulio, frightened and bewildered, stands at the doorway. Ineacute gathers what strength she has to comfort him, telling him that from now on it will be the three of them, herself, Giulio, and baby Lucy. Alessandro, she says gently, has gone far away and will not be coming back. In the next chapter, Ineacute, still in shock, begins to piece together the reality of what has happened. She knows, though she will not say it aloud, that her husband has left her for her sister. The betrayal feels preordained, as if it had been foreshadowed long before their marriage, back when they stood together on their honeymoon in Florence. She remembers the view from Piazzale Michelangelo, the Duomo glowing faintly in the distance, and the sudden chill that overcame her, a whisper of intuition that this man would one day ruin her life. She had felt the certainty of future heartbreak even as she clung to him, already in love with the idea of permanence that would never be hers. Now, in the aftermath of his departure, Ineacute's mind drifts backward through time, tracing the path that led her to this desolate moment. Years before, in a provincial town in Colombia called Paipa, remote, sun-washed, and surrounded by mountains few outsiders ever see twice, her family's story had already been marked by cycles of love, loss, and ruin. Her mother, Aura, had first been married to General de la Rota, a man 27 years her senior, whose lineage traced back to the old nobility of Milan. His great-grandfather, Massimiliano della Ruota, later de la Rota, had crossed the ocean after his political ambitions failed in Italy. Renouncing his name to symbolize his broken fortune, he settled in Bogotá, where a fateful card game won him vast tracts of land in Paipa. On that land he built a mansion of marble and Venetian glass, the grandest in the region, a palace born of vanity and exile. Yet beneath its elegance lay the seeds of tragedy. Massimiliano's story ended in jealousy and violence when he murdered his young wife and her lover, then hanged himself. His ghost, it was said, lingered in the corridors, rearranging portraits, shattering mirrors, disturbing the silence of the house for generations. Ineacute's mother, Aura, inherited both the mansion and its curse of beauty. Her marriage to the general was one of privilege, marked by lavish soirees attended by politicians and military men from Bogotá. But the general's death left her widowed and adrift, a young woman with a newborn daughter, Isabel, and no guidance on how to manage the estate. It was in the aftermath of that death, while the general's will was being read aloud, that Aura met Rodolfo Camargo, a gentle, impoverished scribe with kind eyes and poetic inclinations. They fell in love almost instantly, she still wrapped in mourning lace, he entranced by her pale hands and green eyes. When she discovered she was pregnant with the general's child, Rodolfo promised to raise the baby as his own. They married quietly under the blessing of Father Louis, sealing the union between privilege and poverty. From that marriage came 4 daughters, Rosa Helena Ophelia, nicknamed Chata for her flat little nose, and finally Ineacutes, the youngest and most beloved. Ineacutes' childhood in the great mansion was filled with the indulgence of love and the slow disintegration of fortune. Her father, though kind and patient, lacked ambition. He preferred sketching roses in the garden to working at the law office, while her mother lost herself in the artistry of beauty, poetry, flowers, and aesthetic perfection. Aura was a woman of refinement and fragility, someone who could arrange roses with divine precision, but who faltered before the harsher thorns of reality. Even as the family's wealth dwindled, Aura surrounded herself with beauty. Each morning she would rise to tend her rose garden, creating elaborate bouquets for every room in the house. The most precious among them was the black rose, a rare bloom she tended with near-religious devotion. It became both her solace and her symbol, beauty that cuts, beauty that bleeds. Iniakutes grew up under her mother's shadow, adored, sheltered, and marked as special. Aura often told her that she was not only the most beautiful of her daughters but also the most gentle, her disposition radiating sweetness that drew people to her. But Aura also reminded her that she had nearly died as a toddler from food poisoning, as though that brush with death had sanctified her somehow. From then on, Iniakutes was treated as delicate, her meals specially prepared, her health vigilantly guarded. Her father, Rodolfo, took her to the rose garden on Sundays where he copied the shapes of petals onto wood panels while she memorized her mother's verses. He was a quiet man, more comfortable with silence than with speech, who expressed affection through small acts of care, the carving of a flower, the patient turn of a page. When Iniakutes turned 10, a seamstress was hired to teach the sisters how to sew. Their days filled with simple joys, puppet plays, whispered stories from the maids, and evenings spent listening to ghost tales. Her favorite was the legend of La Llorona, the weeping mother whose cries filled the night. The story frightened her yet also thrilled her as though it hinted at something she already knew about sorrow. It was during those years that Iniakutes experienced something that would haunt her forever, a visitation by the supernatural that linked her to the mystical past of her family. One afternoon while reading near the cornfields, she saw a small man in green swinging from a stalk. When she blinked he vanished, only to reappear days later, beckoning her to come closer. Behind him stood a radiant woman, an angelic being of impossible beauty, who spoke to her without words. "You have a gift," the woman said. "The gift of seeing the future, the hearts of others. It will help you, but it will also bring you suffering." As Iniakutes listened, images flooded her mind. Women in orange robes dancing with tambourines, their laughter like wind chimes, a man's face unknown yet familiar whom she was destined to love, daughters who would one day circle her like those dancing women. Then the angel smiled and faded, leaving Iniakutes whispering to herself, "Don't forget." The world of the mansion was alive with such presences. Paintings turned upside down, mirrors shattered, whispers echoed in empty rooms. The servants blamed the spirit of Massimiliano de la Rota, forever tormented by jealousy. For Iniakutes, the house seemed charged with an invisible force, one that connected the living and the dead, the past and the future, the beauty and the pain of her lineage. Her mother, meanwhile, continued her descent into genteel ruin. When Rodolphe finally confessed that their money was nearly gone, Aura refused to believe it. "I need peace of mind," she told him as she planted a new rosebush. "You have made me happy, don't ruin it now." She clung to her flowers, arranging them like prayers against decay, unable to face the truth that their fortune, like her roses, would soon wither. Iniakutes watched her father's helpless tenderness and her mother's quiet denial, absorbing both, the patience of one, the aesthetic yearning of the other. It was from them that she inherited her own contradictions, a love for beauty entwined with an unending vulnerability to betrayal. By the time she grew into womanhood, the mansion had lost much of its former splendor. Yet within its fatting walls, Iniakutes' fate was still being shaped. The angel's prophecy lingered in her mind like a melody half-remembered, the promise of daughters and of a man who would bring both love and ruin. That man, she would later learn, was Alessandro. He entered her life like sunlight through stained glass, dazzling, warm, and impossible to grasp. She married him believing she had found her destiny, only to discover too late that destiny is often indistinguishable from curse. Now, years later, sitting alone in the echoing mansion, Iniakutes finally understands the angel's warning. The gift of seeing had not saved her. It had only made her aware of what was coming, the betrayal, the abandonment, the loneliness that now fills every corner of the house. Her story, like her mother, is one of beauty and blindness, of women who see too much and yet cannot look away. The house in Pepa stands as both witness and mirror, its marble and glass reflecting generations of love turned to ruin, roses blooming over old graves. And so, as Iniakutes sits beside her sleeping daughter, the scent of roses still clinging to her skin, she whispers again the words she once spoke as a child, "Don't forget." For even in her sorrow, she knows that memory, painful, luminous, unrelenting, is the only inheritance that remains.